This is Olivia Garcia. I'm going to do my mini lecture on political socialization because this is a topic that is currently taught in the dual credit programs at NISD, and I have heard that this topic really resonates with the kids. All right, so I'll start. So today's topic is political socialization, and this is basically how we learn about political values and beliefs and our behaviors and what influences us. Um, so let's get into that. So the key here is that there are some key concepts or influences for political socialization, meaning that there are certain things in your life that are going to be highly influential in how you form your political ideals and your behaviors for later in life when you're actually able to vote. One is going to be your family. That's going to be a huge role. Your school systems, and then major events like big political events that happen in the world or within our country can actually help to shift your established political views later on in life, or help to form them as you're an adolescent. We'll get into, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's start with the primary agents of socialization, and in the order of which they're influential. So the first and the most influential group that's going to help you form your political ideals is going to, and your opinions, is going to be your family. And that makes sense because we spend so much time, our formative years, of the years that we're really being molded in how to behave in society, and being molded in our mannerisms. It's the our parents and our family teach us a lot about how to behave in the larger world. And a part of that is going to be, how do we behave and believe politically? It's going to help, um, establish a lot of party affiliations really early in life. It doesn't mean that you're going to automatically adopt your parents' political ideals and their party affiliations because, they were in this party, so therefore I'm going to follow that party. That's definitely not what we're saying, but they do become very big influences on this. And, it makes sense in thinking that you're going to see your parents talk about politics if they do, and you'll probably know how your parents are voting. In today's polarized world, people are very vocal about political opinions, right? So the family is highly influential. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to adopt. I had parents who definitely influenced me, but I went in the opposite direction and questioned everything they said about politics, and now have completely opposite political views than my parents do. But they an influence? Yes, they were. Did I adopt their values? No, I did not. But they definitely influenced me to do my own research and ask my own questions and then form my own beliefs. Now that leads us to school. A lot of this, forming those political ideologies and those opinions is based on what we learn and what we read about and what we discuss at school. Because you're going to learn about civics, of course, early on. You start in elementary school, and then you will finish in college, right? At the university level, if you do go to college, and if not, you're finishing in high school. Um, Schools help to establish a lot of like our views about the role of authority, the role of authority in between you and authority, and you and the government. And this really helps to um, develop like your political identity. Like, how do you see yourself in the political world? Now, another influence is going to be your peer groups. We tend to, well, what we're noticing, and especially, what research is showing us in modern times, is that people are gravitating towards other people that have the same political beliefs. Now, this is very normal to see, like at the college level and the university level and the adult level. Not as well researched at the adolescence level or in early high school. However, I did assign an article for you to read about middle schoolers that were actually gravitating toward each other based on political beliefs. We call this political homophily. This is when people tend to, uh, you know, gravitate towards each other, people that have similar ideas. That takes us to our secondary influences on political socialization. So these are things that they influence your political ideas. Absolutely. They may not be as influential as your family and your education, but they definitely influence how you believe. Now, first up is the media. Um, this is playing a larger and larger role as technology gets more common and easier to access. When I was in high school, we didn't have phones and social media, but now, I mean, everybody's got this access to social media, and we're constantly being bombarded with news and updates about politics, and we're hearing lots of different opinions, and it's all being thrown at us through the media, and not all of it is completely unbiased. We know that, right? The media can definitely be biased, and then we can also we're exposed to media that is run with algorithms that are driven to create opinions for us. So the media has become a really big influence on how people are forming their their political opinions. I'm sorry, social media in particular, right? Now, next up would be religion. And if you look at political socialization book or research prior to cell phones or smartphones, I should say, religion, like in the 1960s, used to play a pretty big role. But as time goes on, Americans have actually become less religious. It still has an impact, but the media is definitely playing a larger role. Now, religion helps to give us like a moral framework for how we view or form our political opinions. Um, and you see this in like the arguments today about like, pro-life and pro-choice. And these are usually rooted in religion or religious beliefs. Now, major events, they play a big role in our political socialization now because it seems that big things are happening. The world has been changing very rapidly in the last 50 years, and that has been representative in how people's political opinions and how polarization has been influenced by this, right? So if you think about like 9/11, well, I digress. I should say that prior to like the 1960s, people in adulthood would it would be very hard to change their political public opinion, their political opinions. People tend to become set in their ways when they get older. But major events can actually shift people's political perspectives, and that's because they're polarizing, and they really get people engaged in politics. Major events can actually drive people to the voting booth that would normally wouldn't go vote, right? They help to get people engaged in politics. So if you think about like 9/11, 9/11 really influenced a lot of people's perspectives on how the world should run and what America's role should be in the world. And that helped to shape public opinions. Now, each generation as well is different. As you get older, they say that as you get older, you become more conservative. And if you look at the research, baby boomers tend to vote much more conservatively on issues than, say, Gen Z. They tend to be much more liberal. We also know that Gen Z is much more distrustful of the American government than, say, the baby boomers, because the generation that divides, Gen Z has, you guys have experienced life differently than the baby boomer did. You've definitely been exposed to different things, right? Climate change was not a thing in the 1960s, and extreme weather and major wars. Well, wars were of course, wars are always a part of human life. Um, but we've seen a lot of change in the last 30 years. Now, the reason I assigned the Osterhoff article is because there's not a lot of research into political socialization at that young of age, and this article is about, it's the group that they test on is in middle school, which is very young, and it's about these kids that were these young adolescents that were basically forming groups that demonstrated political homophily, meaning that they were congregating towards each other based on their political beliefs. And I absolutely see this in even the high school level, right? We have a group of students, and I know that I've heard other students talk about this, like those are the Trump supporters, or those are the liberals over there. We are seeing peer groups start to form based on political ideology at a very young age, and this is probably the implications here is it's about political polarization. People have become very divided in their opinions and very intolerant, which is probably not healthy. It's not healthy for a um, a healthy democracy. In healthy democracies, people have to be respectful of others' opinions, and we're definitely losing that, and we're seeing that even at the middle school age, as this article demonstrates. So, some key takeaways here. There are definitely generational patterns, meaning that older people tend to be more conservative than younger people. There are key influences, the most influential being your family. And I did kind of summarize this for you. So most of your political attitudes and identities are shaped early in life. Peer groups and social media, the media in general, are starting to play a larger and larger role. Major events that happen in society can definitely shift our views, but political socialization as a whole is a lifelong process. There's going to be things that are um, influencing you throughout your life.